Good morning and welcome back to our news bulletin. I'm Sadia Stremska, and we begin with the latest from Serbia. Crowds of protesters took to the streets of Belgrade on Friday to draw attention to inaccuracies in state media reports. The rally, organized by students in front of the Serbian state TV under the name Our Right to Know Everything, was joined by thousands of supporters and bystanders. The students invited all citizens to join them, stressing that they are not affiliated with any political party. The organizers brought a mock birthday present for the RTS Director General, a giant sandwich, which alluded to the sandwiches that the ruling Serbian Progressive Party allegedly distributed to people in exchange for their support in pro-government rallies. Although the protest was mostly peaceful, the police were forced to intervene after a man tried to drive through the crowd of protesters. Protests continue also in Georgia, despite the government's efforts to suppress demonstrations. On Friday, a group of protesters showed defiance with the use of fireworks, which had been banned at protests on December 13th. According to the newly introduced law, the use of pyrotechnics at a protest is punishable with a fine of as much as €680. Earlier this week, opposition party member Mariam Sitchinava was arrested and fined close to €2,000 for the use of fireworks at a rally. In a show of defiance, Sitchinava set off fireworks after her release and was arrested once again. And now moving to Ukraine, at least 4 people were killed and 3 were injured in a Russian airstrike on Kyiv in the early hours of Saturday morning. Significant destruction has been reported across the city. Local authorities report that a water supply pipeline and an entrance to a metro station were damaged in the attack. Several cars caught fire and debris is scattered across Kyiv's Desnyansky district. Now let's turn to the Middle East. The Israeli government, led by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, has agreed on the ceasefire deal. The 6-week phase 1 of the agreement is set to go into force on Sunday. During the first phase of the agreement, 33 remaining hostages will be released in exchange for more than 700 Palestinian prisoners, many of whom had been imprisoned without due process. 3 female hostages are set to be released on Sunday, and Israel has agreed to release 70 female and 25 male prisoners in return. The first stage also requires that 600 humanitarian relief trucks enter Gaza each day, while the IDF is supposed to withdraw to the east, away from populated areas, allowing civilians to return to the remains of their homes. Around 90% of Gaza's population of 2.3 million people has been displaced since the start of the conflict. Security for NATO and the EU remains crucial for Europe, as Britain's Prime Minister Keir Starmer announced closer cooperation with Poland. The 2 nations are expected to work on a new defense and security pact.
Poland and the UK are long-standing allies with a partnership that goes back generations. Now the 2 NATO allies once again face a common threat, an aggressive Russia that seeks to destabilize all of Europe.
The key objective here will be fending off Russia's aggression. I think, some of the key focuses will be on coordinating efforts to tackle disinformation and hybrid threats, which is something that the UK and the Polish side has been doing for quite a few years now.
With the prospect of Donald Trump potentially reducing U.S. military support for Kyiv, key NATO allies have been prompted to do more on their own. The timing of the British Prime Minister's visit to Warsaw is meant to send a signal.
The UK is anxious about its position in the world, about its relationship with key allies, and it's looking to strengthen those partnerships, and thus the visits to Ukraine, the visit today to Poland.
It was former British Prime Minister Boris Johnson who was the first Western leader to travel to embattled Ukraine after the full-scale invasion by Moscow. Keir Starmer visited Kyiv on Thursday, following the tradition of UK support for Ukraine. Once again, the PM ensured that London's backing would continue, pledging security guarantees as well as a new mobile air defence system.
We agree that it must be a peace that guarantees your security, your independence, and your right to choose your own future. We will work with you and with all of our allies on steps that would be robust enough to guarantee Ukraine's security.
These declarations come at a crucial time as Russia makes gains in Ukraine, striking energy grids and cities during a harsh winter. As a major NATO player, the UK has operational capabilities to defend the eastern flank. That goes hand in hand with Poland, which has invested heavily in its modern armed forces in the last years. Together, the two nations have developed common military projects, including the Miecznik, or Swordfish, frigate, as well as advanced air defense systems. Starmer has also shored up Britain's commitment in the High North and Baltic with the Joint Expeditionary Force, a multinational partnership which includes 10 nations, as he recently toured military sites in Estonia. Even if the return of Donald Trump may result in less U.S. engagement in NATO, the UK and Poland's partnership looks to remain strong for the foreseeable future. Sasha Farbach, TVP World.
Belarus has moved migrants from the Polish border towards Russia, says the Polish border guard. The relocation of the migrants comes ahead of the upcoming presidential election in Belarus. The regime of Alexander Lukashenko has used the migrants as a weapon aimed at the West, forcing them to storm the borders of Poland, Lithuania and Latvia.
The Polish border with Belarus has been under constant attacks by aggressive illegal migrants, aided by Belarusian soldiers for the past 4 years. But now it's gone much quieter. The deputy of the Podlasie Border Guard unit has an explanation for the shift.
At some point we observed that migrants were being taken towards Russia from the border zone. Lukashenko may be interested in peace in the country before the presidential election.
Alexander Lukashenko has been the only president of Belarus since the office was created in the 1990s. According to international observers and domestic opposition movements, Lukashenko has won each election through a rigged vote. The upcoming election is expected to be no different.
They have nothing in common with the free and fair process of people voting for some candidates, because all those who anyhow deserve the right to participate in these elections, either in jails, either in abroad, either they are keeping silence inside the country.
Democratic opposition in Belarus is brutally persecuted by the Lukashenko regime. There are more than 1,200 political prisoners in the country, according to the Vyasna Human Rights Center. Belarus, a former Soviet republic, has been under heavy influence of Russia for decades. During the launch of the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, a large part of Russian troops entered the country from the south of Belarus, making Minsk a party in the war. The sham presidential election will take place on January 26th.
Michał Szymeczka, the leader of the main opposition party in Slovakia, has met with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in Kyiv against the backdrop of the latter's rocky relationship with Slovakia's incumbent government. Szymeczka's visit to Kyiv comes after Slovakian Prime Minister Robert Fico ignored a similar invite issued by Zelensky. The relationship between Slovakia and Ukraine has been rocky recently over Ukraine's refusal to renew an agreement allowing for Russian gas to pass through its territory. Zelensky also said that he is ready to hold an open dialogue with the Slovakian government despite its leader's refusal to meet with him in Kyiv this week. Repressions of the Kremlin know no bounds. Poland calls for the immediate release of all political prisoners in Russia. This is the reaction of the Polish authorities to the sentencing of 3 lawyers who acted for the late Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny. Earlier, the European Commission condemned the sentencing and called on the Kremlin to release the lawyers immediately.
These words came after Alexei Navalny's lawyers, who attempted to defend the late Russian dissident from the Kremlin's regime, were sentenced to 3 to 5.5 years jail time in a Russian penal colony.
What can we say? We could expect that.
Vadim Kobzev, Alexei Liptsev and Igor Sergunin were arrested and tried for participating in an extremist organization. The lawyers were accused of illegally passing messages from Navalny, who was imprisoned in a penal colony, to his colleagues and supporters.
This is nonsense. Everything that is happening, that lawyers are being persecuted for doing their direct job. This is explained by the fact that Navalny is a toxic figure for Russia, even after his death, and all the people who helped him are now held accountable, unfortunately. This has never happened in my memory, such a mass attack on lawyers. All because they were defending Putin's #1 enemy. Very sad.
Alexei Navalny's widow, Yulia Navalnaya, shared evidence on YouTube that Navalny and his lawyers were illegally surveilled during their private meetings.
By law, such videos shouldn't exist. Meetings between a defendant and his lawyers are protected by attorney-client privilege, and no one has the right to know their contents.
The fate of Navalny's other lawyers is also in peril. Olga Mikhailova and Alexander Fedulov, who escaped Russia, will be tried in absentia. Experts and Navalny's supporters hope that should another prisoner exchange be negotiated like the one that took place last summer, Putin may be interested in swapping the sentenced lawyers.
I think the idea of exchanging true criminals that were arrested in the West for political prisoners in Russia is extremely counterproductive. Because the thing is that Putin can take as many hostages as he likes. Putin enjoys such kind of propositions. Again, as much as I want my friends to be free.
4 years ago, Alexei Navalny returned to Russia but was detained by security forces at Moscow's Sheremetyevo airport. That was Navalny's final day of freedom, as he never left the penal colony before his death a year ago.
Make America Great Again. That has been U.S. President-elect Donald Trump's most prominent manifesto. But whether he will deliver on it remains a question. Guests of the next episode of TVP World's Warsaw debate address the most pressing questions regarding Trump's upcoming term.
There's a strategy in which Trump picks people who would otherwise have no political future. Remember, he's a TV host. And this allows absolute loyalty and control. These people know if they leave government, they're never coming back. And maybe they get a few book deals afterwards and so on. But essentially, it's a technique of control. I don't admire it. I don't think it serves the Pentagon or the United States well. But there is a logic to it.
We had basically the Wizard of Oz situation where we had a little decrepit old man who was basically senile being micromanaged for 4 years. This is the real scandal. And therefore, everyone in the world knew that Biden was incontinent and incompetent. And what happened was they took advantage.
He might have done himself a disservice by using such remarkably strong rhetoric, suggesting, for example, the use of military force in Greenland, making Canada the 51st state of the United States, or even in some way taking over the Panama Canal. These are things he's not going to be able to deliver on. So will he have a syndrome of the boy who cried wolf, and so he will not be taken seriously? Also, I think the realities of government, the inertia of the bureaucracy, the realities of the fact that he doesn't have such a super majority, not such a comfortable majority, which will probably diminish after 2 years, will probably mean that his bite is going to be a little less than his bark.
It will certainly be a heated debate. You can watch the entire episode of Warsaw Debate tomorrow at 9:15 p.m. CET here on TVP World. And with this, we conclude World News. Thank you for watching, and please stay tuned for more.